Good afternoon. I'm Gail Williams from Vanderbilt University. On behalf of Vanderbilt University, I want to welcome you to Vanderbilt at TPAC, TPAC at Vanderbilt. Hey! Happy spring. It was here yesterday. I don't know where it went, but it's okay. We're still happy, and we're here, and it's exciting, and we're getting ready to celebrate an absolutely wonderful Broadway production, The Color Purple, the musical about love. And I think we have today just a really great panel for you, and I think it's going to be really an exciting opportunity for all of us. So I'm not going to talk long, but I want to introduce the panel to you today. Frank Dobson from Vanderbilt University is here, as well as Alice Randall, a professor of English here at Vanderbilt University. And we also are delighted to have members of the Color Purple cast with us today. We have Dana Dantzler, who plays the role of Celie, and we have Pam Trotter, who plays the role of Sophia here today. And I've sort of had a few minutes with them here and there since I've been down here today, and I'm just giddy about it. I think we're going to have an absolutely wonderful time, and we're all going to feel like spring is here. So with no further ado, our wonderful panel today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. Thanks for coming out on this somewhat rainy afternoon. And my name's Frank, Alice, Pam, and Dana. And we're going to have just a wonderful time talking about an incredible work of art, a work that's been, a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, a very acclaimed Academy Award nominated movie, and also this acclaimed musical. At this point, though, I want to turn it to my colleague and friend Alice, who's going to give us a synopsis of the story, and then we're going to begin to rock and roll.
Well, this is actually my copy of the book from before it won the Pulitzer Prize, where it just says the author of Meridian. The Color Purple is set in the South in rural Georgia and big city Memphis, spanning the years 1911 to 1945, and it may, in fact, be my favorite American novel. It's the story of Celie, who at the age of 14 has lost her mama to death and her innocence to the man she calls Pa. When the play opened, she has been raped repeatedly, conceived 2 children, and turned into a hyper-efficient house woman, domestic worker, cleaning the house, toting water, responsible for the care of all the children, but most particularly her pretty and beloved sister, Nettie. The novel is a series of letters to God and to Nettie, largely, and I want to read the third letter in the novel. It's very short. Dear God, he act like he can't stand me no more. Say I'm evil and always up to no good. He took my other little baby, a boy this time, but I don't think he killed it. I think he sold it to a man and his wife over Monticello. I got breasts full of milk running down myself. He say, why don't you look decent? Put on something. But what I'm supposed to put on? I don't have nothing. I keep hoping he finds somebody to marry. I see him looking at my little sister. She's scared. But I say, I'll take care of you with God help. Unfortunately, instead of getting married, Pa marries Celie off to a vicious land-owning black farmer Celie calls Mr., a man a little less vicious and more gorgeous in this wonderful musical. On Mr.'s farm, Celie's life doesn't change much. She cooks and cleans and gets used for sex, except now she can't have babies, which doesn't bother her husband, Mr. He's already had children, and he's in love with a beautiful blues singer, Suge Avery. Celie is settling into this hard life when life becomes unbearable. Mr. attempts to seduce and rape Nettie, who he calls beautiful, as opposed to Celie. When Nettie resists, Celie loses her truest love. Expelled from Mr.'s farm, unable to visit her sister, she is unwilling to return home to her raping father, so Nettie runs off. The sisters promise to write letters, but the letters never come. How Celie not only endures, and Celie is brilliantly portrayed in this performance.
Thank you.
By Dana to my far left. How Celie not only endures, but grows from being a poor, and this is how she is called by the town, poor, ugly black girl, into being a beautiful, rich enough, 50-ish black businesswoman, despite all odds, is the story of The Color Purple and the musical The Color Purple. And it has a lot to do with trusting God, loving her sister, falling in love with the most unexpected person, and being inspired by her daughter-in-law, the indomitable Sophia. And with that, we're going to start off by jumping into a performance.
You told Harpo to beat me?
I'm sorry.
I loves Harpo. God knows I do, but I'll kill him dead before I let him or anybody beat me. All my life I had to fight. I had to fight my daddy, had to fight my brothers, my cousins, my uncles too. But I never thought I'd have to fight in my own house. I feel sorry for you, to tell you the truth. You remind me of my mom under your husband's thumb. No, you under your husband's foot. What he say go? Why you so scared? I'll never know. 'Cause if a man raise his hand, hell no. Hell no. Girl, child ain't safe in a family of men. Sick and tired how a woman still live like a slave. Lord, you better learn how to fight back while you're still alive. You show them girls and beat back that jive. 'Cause when a man just don't give a damn, hell no. Hell no. When that man used to touch me, he climb on top and start to rock me away. Lord knows I still love him, but he tried to make me mine, and I just ain't that kind. Hell no.
Sometimes my husband get on me so hard it hurt me all over. But he my husband, so I just talk to my old maker. This life will soon be over. Heaven lasts always.
What you ought to do is bash Mr. Head open and think on heaven later. You can't stay here, girl.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is my second time witnessing this, and I got to buy a ticket and come back. I love this play. I love the book. I love the movie. As a matter of fact, I watched the movie again, and again I wept. But talking about the subject of love, and this is indeed a love story, I'd like to ask each one of the ladies to my left to talk a little bit about The Color Purple, and what do you love about it? What about it compels you to perform it or to write about it or to just love this book and delve into it again? Backstage we were talking about some of us are rereading it again. So would each one of you talk a little bit about what you love about the story?
What I love about it is the strength and the unity of the women in this piece. The women seem to all go through some type of struggle with the male in their life, and the way the women come together in the end and triumph and help each other, not even really knowing that they're helping each other, but they are really helping each other to survive and get through this time of not understanding why it is the way it is.
I love this story because there's so many women in the world who don't understand the value of their own worth. People sometimes believe that they're given what they're given, and that's all that they can achieve. Some people don't believe that they can be loved or they should deserve happiness or any of the fruits of the world. And what we come to realize is that in the book, in the musical, is that everyone does matter and everyone deserves to have a big bite of this world, of the fruits of this world, and we're all connected. And we are here. I'm here. That's what Celie says. You're here, she's here, we're all here, and we're all connected. And through love, we can grow.
I love that it's about not just surviving, about thriving, that Celie writes from the very beginning and she ends up creating things. She has a pants company, that she figures out how to love and how to enjoy and take pleasure in nature and others despite just extraordinary pain.
Thank you. Thank you all.
But
Thank you.
Frank, you need to tell us, Dr. Dobson, what do you love about it?
Put him on the spot. Yes, indeed. I love so many things about it, and I love the way in which it evokes the sense of community and family. I mean, there are struggles, and people who are somewhat ostracized find family. I mean, clearly, Celie, when she's left alone, Shug comes to her and sort of rescues her, and they have, a love relationship, but it's also a sister relationship. And the way in which by the end of the piece, and it's wonderfully portrayed in the musical, you get a sense of community and coming together in family in spite of the struggles. And in fact, indeed, I would say because of the struggles. And so that's one of the things that draws me to this piece over and over again. I've got one other question for the two performers, ladies. In playing the roles that you've played, have these roles changed you personally and made you perhaps look at things differently in terms of perspective? You want to talk on that, either one of you or both?
Well, sure. Like I said before, it's actually taught me that, again, we are all connected. Celie goes through. What's great about her relationship with Shug is when Shug tells her that God is not some man that we've seen in the pictures. He's inside of you, he's inside of me, he's in the trees, he's in the stars, he's in the sky, he's in the flowers, he's in the little birds that sing to us. And that kind of changed my perspective. It takes, I go outside and I look up now, and I have this sense of wonder about this creation. I mean, we are all made from the same material, the fabric of the lives, and it just, when you look at things that way, it just kind of, you want to put all the small petty things aside, because we're a part of this wonderful big picture, each and every single one of us. Every single being is here to create something, even though we may not know what it is right now.
For me, Sophia, she is a very strong-willed woman. Dana and I had this conversation during the rehearsal process of, I'm not really like that. I'm really not. I'm really kind of quiet and shy sometimes. But when you get to know me, I think you'll probably see a different side. But But for the most part, I think so. For me, I've learned that it's okay to kind of say what you feel, as long as you do it in the right way. And I kind of get away with it now because I'm hired to tell people how I feel. So I find myself using that a lot of times outside because I'm just going to say it. In relationships, and that's what this is about. Relationships, love relationships. A lot of times you want to be in a special relationship with someone and you kind of don't agree with what they might say, so I just kind of pull back. Pam kind of pulls back and like, okay, I'm gonna let that go. But in my insides, I want to be Sophia and say, hell no, you know? So I'm learning that, and I really have been applying that in my personal relationship. It's the truth, I'm sorry, and it's okay because there are people like that, you know, you got to be careful not to hurt people's feelings though when you do that. So that's how I feel about it.
I will say that when I first read this book in 1982, it was the year after I graduated from college, and it was Alice Walker's example, but the example of fictional Celie, who kept writing to God and to her sister, that caused me to decide to be a novelist. Literally reading this book, and I had some abuse in my own background, inspired me to take up the pen. And now I've published 3 novels, each of them that does have a raped woman in it, in honoring the kind of transcendence that Celie experienced and that I hope to experience by writing. But I get to a little bit turn the tables on Dr. Dobson again. Some critics and some viewers have made the claim that The Color of Purple portrays men in a negative manner. Do you agree with that?
Well, I could say hell no, but I won't. Because it doesn't. Quite frankly, it doesn't. If you read the book closely, as I've done and taught the book, there are these men like Samuel. There are these men like Odessa's husband, and Odessa's one of Sophia's sisters, Jack, who are clearly these incredibly nurturing men. And years ago, I wrote a paper on the title of which was They Give Us Home, the nurturing black male in the work of Alice Walker, and I looked at many of her other characters in other works. And so I think you have to look really closely and read a lot of Walker's work, and you'll see that what she offers up is a standard for masculinity that may be different than the traditional patriarchal standard, but it's a standard nonetheless that gives home and gives community and gives family and values everyone, regardless of gender. And I think that's what Alice Walker is saying to us. I know that's what she's saying to us very clearly. So no, she's not bashing women. Bashing men, excuse me. She's offering up a standard to men of behavior that may be different than the traditional standard, but perhaps that traditional standard needs to be eradicated and changed. And I think that's what she's saying. Absolutely.
I also, to piggyback on that, you also can see, maybe there was something in the times, because you can definitely see a difference between Mr.'s portrayal and the way Harpo feels. You know,
absolutely.
Harpo, he's more of a nurturing kind. He doesn't try to make Sophia mind until he gets that advice. He gets that advice from Mr. first, and then he gets that advice from Celie, because that's pretty much the only thing she knows. The only thing she knows. But you can kind of see the difference. And then in the musical with Squeak, she wants to leave with Celie and Suge. And, you know, Mr. still says, you know, you better stop her. But Harpo says, you know what, she wants to sing. So, I mean, you can definitely see the difference in the time and the generation, the generational difference.
And Mr. does come around.
He does.
Without giving things, and I think that people who do say, that make this point, that think that it's chauvinistic, are ignoring the fact that Mr. is changed by this world, this community of women, and that he actually is the instrument for the final reconciliation for Celie's deepest dream to come true, a reunion with her sister.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's a story of redemption. And in the case, that, you know, one of the most dastardly characters in the piece is redeemed. Yeah. Another question for the actors. What did you learn about Celie and Sophia? What resonated with you about their characters? And I know you kind of touched on this some more, but anything else you'd like to add in terms of what resonated with you about their characters?
For me, the fact that it opened a door for heavy women who may have low self-esteem for whatever reason. It just kind of makes it, puts a strong outlook on someone who may be overweight, feeling a little down about it, not able to lose weight. You never know what the reason might be. It could be health, could be the fact that they may eat too much because they were abused, or any of those things. But just the fact that it kind of opens the door to be the spokesperson for a heavy woman.
Who's very sexy and attractive in this.
What I particularly love about Celie is just her amazing strength that she has throughout the entire piece. And the thing is, she doesn't quite understand her own strength. She doesn't really know that she's strong. She kind of just does what she's told. But she's constantly having all this weight put on her back. And she carries that with her throughout her entire life, which, you know, it makes her who she is in the end. However, there's also this just strong sense of curiosity with her. In the book, she talks about, she thinks that she sees her daughter, and she talks to the lady who has her daughter, and what's her name? And she's very inquisitive in her mild manner. So yeah, her strength and curiosity is something that I really love about Celie. From the start, you see that. And she doesn't quite see it herself, which makes it more beautiful.
You want to jump in there in terms of characters that you love, one or two?
Well, I think that when you're young, when I first read it, I identified with Celie. As I said, I identified with her writing, I identified with her spirituality. As you get older, I find that I have much more identified with Sophia, who is the amazing mother, keeps the very clean house, and also stands up for both her own identity and for her passion with her man, in her largeness, in her unconventionality. But it's funny, Sophia is also very much a lady, and particularly in this presentation, in this performance of the musical. And I identify with that more gentle, large power of Sophia's.
Thank you, thank you. And it's such a story of celebration, even in the midst of oppression. Celie writes to God, and these characters, all of whom are oppressed. We got to remember this is the segregated South in the early 20th century, and they're all oppressed in some way or another. One of the things you find out is that Celie's real father was lynched. And so clearly it's an era that's very different than the era in which we live today in terms of race relations, and the piece comments on that. But in the midst of that, we have these characters who celebrate in spite of, the gospel songs and the blues songs, this beauty that comes out of these incredible odds against them. And I want to kind of segue from that to talking a little bit more about the setting and the fact that Alice Walker, who's a child of Mississippi, is one of those in a line of black women Southern writers, and I have one to my left, and I'd like to ask her to talk a little bit about that.
Well, when you speak of Alice Walker and being in a line of black Southern women writers, we must first immediately call the name Zora Neale Hurston. Because Zora Neale Hurston, from Florida, a black woman writer, was the writer that most inspired Alice Walker. And one of the things that Alice Walker did when she made just a tiny bit of money before she was very successful was to actually make sure that Zora got a proper gravestone and a grave site. And so she, Alice Walker always honored her literary forebears. But when we think of The Color Purple, which is a novel that won the Pulitzer Prize, and it is a novel that won the National Book Award, we must realize that it is a novel in which very important and before this novel, separate literary traditions come to fruition. Because The Color Purple is an epistolatory novel, which many of you will know what that is. That's a novel in letters. And most of you who know about literature and novels, when the novel was born in the 18th century in England, Pamela is by many people considered the first novel. Other people make other suggestions, but let's assume the novel was born in the 18th century in England. When Richardson wrote his novel in letters, he started a tradition of epistolatory novels that Alice Walker walked into and used in a way that had never been used before. So we've got this epistolatory tradition on one hand. We also have this tradition of black Southern women, notably Zora Neale Hurston, but others before her, telling their own stories about their own ability to define themselves and relate to both the natural world and white and black social worlds. And we have her following in the tradition of Southern writers, that she is, I think, a wild cousin of William Faulkner's. In fact, I like to think of, in a literary sense, that Alice Walker, if Richardson and Hurston had had a literary love child, it would have been Alice Walker, and that Faulkner would have realized that she was his wild-eyed cousin telling related stories with profound differences. From this literary tradition, I think we also need to note, as we talk about it, that there are really three color purples. There is the original novel published in 1982, and then we have the movie that came out a few years later, which is an extraordinary movie that reframes the story, and then we have the musical that came out in 2005. And so the original epistolatory novel is eventually translated into not a series of letters, but a series of songs. And I must just say that I think that that translation for Music City is extremely important, because Music City, I hope most of you know, is named Music City not because of the country music, but because of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And it was Du Bois himself, W.B. Du Bois, who talked about the sorrow songs as being one of the extraordinary examples of art to ever arise on the planet, and one of the most extraordinary examples of black culture. And so here we have this, the aesthetic of translating this book that is about, in some ways, tragedy, and we'll talk about later, transcendence, into songs, is a tradition very powerful in Nashville, Tennessee, where we understand the importance of sorrow songs, and we understand the importance of laughing at things that are not funny at all, but to show our transgression, our willingness, unwillingness to accept certain injustices.
We're going to move to we're moving now to Pam.
Yes. We are, are we, it's Pam.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Dana. Oh, yes. Dana, yes.
Okay. Oh, yes. We're now going to have Pam, who's going to...
Dana.
Dana, I'm sorry. Dana.
Dana.
I'm sorry, Dana. She's going to give us a few lines.
Dear Nettie, I hope this letter finds you wherever you are. Things hard here. People always making things worse for each other. My only joy hearing from you, thinking about you. Now I know you're alive. I'm writing every day and walk into town to mail them no matter what else happened. Even if all my letters pile up at the door of Africa, I keep writing. I love you. Your sister.
Thank you very much, Dana. Again, if you haven't bought tickets, you got to see the play before it leaves Nashville. It's just incredible, heartrending. We want to talk a little bit more about trauma and transcendence of trauma, and I want to share something with you before I turn to my colleague. Alice Walker coined this incredible definition of what I would call black feminism, called womanism, and it really talks about something that I heard as a little black boy growing up in Buffalo, New York, where my mother would talk to my sisters and say, "You acting womanish." and one of the things that Alice Walker talks about is that womanism is a black feminist or a feminist of color, and she talks about the fact that sometimes women would say to their little daughters, "You acting womanish," and usually referring to, and get this, outrageous, audacious, courageous, or willful behavior. And she continues and says, committed to wholeness and survival of entire people, male and female. And I think when we look at this play and we look at this text and we look at this musical, we see that this is what these women are bringing to bear in terms of the trauma and transcending that trauma. And my colleague's going to talk a little bit more about that.
In the reading that Dana just did, she talks about, I'm going to send those letters to even if they wait on the door of Africa. And as we talk about trauma, I wanted to read you just one little letter that Celie does send. Dear God, I spend my wedding day running from the oldest boy. That's Harpo, I think. He 12, his mama died in his arms, and he don't want to hear nothing about no new one. He picked up a rock and laid my head open. The blood run all down between my breast. His daddy say, don't do that, but that's all he say. He got 4 children instead of 3, 2 boys and a girl, 2 girls. The girls' hair ain't been combed since their mammy died. I tell him I'll just have to shave it off, start fresh. He say, bad luck to cut a woman's hair. So after I bandage my head best, I can cook and serve dinner. They have a spring, not a well, and a wood stove like a truck. I start trying to untangle hair. They're only 6 and 8, and they cry, they scream, they accuse me of murder. By 10 o'clock, I'm done. They cry themselves to sleep, but I don't cry. I lay there thinking about Nettie while he on top of me, wonder if she's safe. Then I think about Suge Avery. I know what he doing to me, he done to Suge Avery, and maybe she like it. I put my arm around him. So here we have a woman that is abused by the normal, as Freud would call it, the everyday misery of work on a farm. And we have a sense of the poverty of the times, that these people are actually essentially middle class. And we also have the not everyday misery of having sex with someone who doesn't love you, on top of having been raped by a person you thought was your father. And we have this extraordinary heroism that she is thinking about her sister, and we have this potential she has that she's imagining a woman, Suge Avery, who actually enjoyed loving her man. So at the center of the novel, The Color Purple, is this literal color purple. And what is the color purple? She means the God-given color purple, and our willingness to stay engaged with the sensual pleasures of life and nature, not just sex included, but all beauty that we can find that is here. And it's this commitment to nature and love and beauty that is at the heart of Celie's ability to transcend horrible circumstances. And I said, I like to think that this book inspires survivors to become thrivers by defining themselves by their love and their creations, like Celie does, by their willingness to treasure themselves even when they are despised. The color purple, as Frank Dobson has spoken, is part of a celebration of love and family and friends, including romantic love. Celie engages in all of these and celebrates self-love, but she does it not in a childish way or in a selfish way, because Celie loves herself after she's taken care of everybody else. I think there's some women in this audience that know about that. And about getting, if it takes her to 50 to do it, she eventually, after taking care of everybody else, she does start to take care of herself. And I think that Celie is made to feel ugly. And in one of the songs, she claims she's ugly and black, but present. And I know that Dana has commented on that line. And when Dana sings that line in the musical, it is worth anything for you to get here to hear that. But by the end of the musical, Celie knows, and the world knows, that she's beautiful. And Mr. knows it too. And we also know, as Frank has said, that the old man she thought was her pa wasn't, unlike the movie Precious. And she gets her children back and her sister. And I wanted to end on that note for this part about transcendence, that this novel and this musical is an extraordinary, powerful fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that never loses its eye on what is real and gritty reality, but it keeps on telling us what is ideal. It gives us the color purple to look towards, to move towards like a North Star, to look towards the ideal and in a very real and difficult world. And so I think that's one of the things that ultimately this point about transcendence is we can all achieve it.
We're going to spend a few more minutes. We know that some of you have questions, and keep those. We're going to allow some time, but we wanted to ask the actors, either Pam or Dana, to talk a little bit about how this piece came to the stage.
Well, I believe it started with producer Scott Sanders' vision, and of course Oprah, who invested, I believe, about $10 million to get this to the Broadway stage. But they started workshopping it at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta, with, of course, Scott, Oprah. We have Stephen Bray and Brenda Russell, Marsha Norman, Allie Willis, the composers and lyricists. And LaChanze, who actually originated the role on Broadway, originated the role in the workshop as well. And Gary, our director, Gary Griffin, he actually talks about his experience with Brenda, sitting around the piano, just kind of playing and writing as they workshopped the show. And I believe LaChanze was present in the big number, I'm Here. She just kind of just talked about how she was feeling and what she wanted to do. And so it was a very collaborative process. And of course, Oprah had the branding and was able to bring that to Broadway, which enabled us to do the tour.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
Frank, I wanted to ask you a question. When we've had a chance to talk about this, I was struck by your notion and your awareness that with this musical, that there is a sense of a different ability to construct family. Mm-hmm. I know you've spoken about community at the beginning, but can you talk a little bit about this theme of family and not just the family you're born to and how that plays out in the musical, The Color Purple?
Well, one of the things that Alice Walker does, and she's just incredible, is she reaches way deep down into African-American culture, and she looks at the fact, and we've got to remember when the novel starts, African-Americans are not that far. We're talking about one generation away from slavery. It's the early 20th century. And so these are people who've had to make family because we know that one of the things that slavery did is it disintegrated family. And there's an expression in the black community that I think is still extant today. I may be dating myself. Going for kin, going for brother, going for sister. And we see the way in which these people make kinship with one another. I mean, clearly, Celie and Suge become not just lovers, but sisters as well. And the way in which Celie, as you said, takes care of so many other people, surrounding them with this enormous amount of love. She who is unloved herself has this ability and this capacity to love. She's this mother figure, even though she's just a teenager when she marries. And so one of the things I wanted to do, and I'm going to kind of conclude my remarks, is to read something from this paper that I talked about. And it's real short, but again, it looks at the whole notion of nurturing. And I'm going to go back to Alice Walker's definition of womanism. And she talks about, as again I said, a woman who's committed to survival and wholeness of entire people, both male and female. And she goes on, and she shows us these male characters who have a sensitivity, to doing this. And I want to end with this. She talks about in this collection of essays entitled "In Search of Our Mother's Gardens," Dr. Martin Luther King, who was for her the standard bearer, as he was for many of us. And in the essay entitled "Choice," a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King, she says this about Dr. King, and it's real short, but it's so poignant. He gave us continuity of place, without which community is ephemeral. He gave us home, and I think that's what the characters do for one another in this piece. They give one another home.
Spectacularly put. Thank you. If I can make a light remark about that, in this separation, alienation from home, her children are sent off, and this is not about the plot, so we can reveal some of her children are sent off. They end up being returned to her from Africa, and you talk about in the slavery period that many people had to try to put families together, and even our big pop songs, "Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low to keep me from getting to you, babe." These are family love songs. Right. And this is a family love song, Alice Walker, all about home. And so,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do y'all want to chime in on that at all?
Well, I just think it's wonderful how you said that it's home for one another, because she starts off just with her sister, Celie, and in the end, she's got all this family at her house, and she talks to Suge. When Suge returns, she says, "Look at all these people." It's like her family, her extended family that started from just her sister. Then when her sister was gone, she had no one. Yeah. And then by the end, she has all of these people around her that she loves, that she's able to give her heart to. It's quite wonderful.
Amazing, amazing. And one of the things that ties that together is the music. I mean, you go to this musical and you're in church, and you're also at the juke joint. It's fantastic.
And the 4th of July picnic.
And the picnic, yeah. We're going to allow y'all some time to ask us some questions. We've got about 10 minutes to go. I don't know if there are mics or how we're going to do this. But these 3 lovely ladies to my left will take all your questions.
Is that the question? Okay. What do you bring to it? How do you make it your own?
Well, for me, watching the movie, when it first came out, I fell in love with Oprah's character. And as a kid, I used to imitate the character all the time. I mean, I'm sure everybody did, but I really did. I went way overboard. Wow. And to be able to do it and really have the opportunity to be Sophia, I did have to really think about the surface of what I was playing around with back then and really understand. Now I had to really think about it and understand what am I saying. So I had to kind of go more into the story, more into, what she really was feeling to make it more real. So it's a combination of the two.
For me, well, I think you have to kind of bring your own sense of self into it, your own sense of life experience. It was actually kind of difficult to step into Celie's shoes because I came from a loving family. I was very fortunate to have support. So you kind of just, you look at the literature, you look at the films. Of course, I have these wonderful women that have played Celie before me, of course, Whoopi Goldberg. But as far as the musical, you have LaChanze and, of course, Fantasia and Kenita Miller and Jeanette Bardell, all these women that have played this role, but some things that work for them don't necessarily work for you. So it's about just bringing yourself into it, doing your research, and just taking her experience and trying to personalize how it would affect me, and then bringing that out to the surface. Mm-hmm.
There's a hand right there.
How do you think that these characters, if you were to portray them to some child of today, and motivate them to aspire to not relive things that are tragic or go through what they're going through? There are kids in gangs and all of that. How do you think you would get that across by representing the characters that you portray and the storyline itself, to not relive the past but rise out of it?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I was going to say that's a very good question. And with our kids today, it is kind of hard to get to them, it seems. But I think back then, like with Celie's character and Nettie, you see that they're always reading and writing, which now I think our kids don't do enough of. Right. And I think if we try to push that on them more, that would probably help them. Some kids can go years without even picking up a book and just really reading an entire book. So I would say reading and, trying not to, just constantly driving it. And we recently met Oprah Winfrey's father a couple of nights ago, and he said to me, if it wasn't for
me, none of you would be here. And I remember, I remember the story of how he, he forced Oprah to read. He forced the importance of education on her. And I think that's where it comes from. So we have to kind of still, push that into our kids today.
And as far as, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, as far as like not reliving tragic and circumstances, I believe it's necessary for us to definitely look forward. Alice was talking about the color purple and how it's kind of like the North Star, where you're constantly striving for more. And there's also Celie has a lot to dwell on, but she doesn't. In the end, she says, us lived through it. Like when Mr. comes and. She's lived through it, but now she's gained a better understanding. When someone else leaves her life, someone else comes. When a door is shut, a window opens. There's always more to strive for. Yes.
And I think on a really simple level, the early letters in this book and the curtain of this wonderful Broadway performance is a copy of one of the letters. It's a short letter to God. Encourage kids to write, if not to God, to a grandparent, even if it's via email, that to realize that short writing can be very powerful and it changes the person who writes. So sit down with your child, grandchild, niece, nephew, encourage them to write to somebody this week. Encourage them to write an email to an older person or person in authority of them every day, so they start in the habit of telling the story of their life. And they will realize by getting in the habit of telling the story of their life, they're sort of affecting their own kind of therapy. They're taking shape of the narrative. So.
Yeah, and I would say something. I would say amen to everything that my sisters to my left have said, but I would also say, what happened to the art of diarying? I mean, writing, when I grew up, my sisters had diaries and they wrote in those. Maybe they were writing to God, maybe they were writing to, but that's something that I think we've lost with the internet and with texting and all of that. So again, as a writer myself, one of the things I still do is look at my old journals, whether they're diaries or journals. And so I think that that's something we can encourage young people to do. And again, I think the whole notion of creativity, which you were talking about, Alice, that Celie is so creative and emphasizing to young people to express their creativity, whether it's through singing or drawing or letters, or in the case of Celie, sewing. Well.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It has been a great turnout. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the inside of the other theater, but it's way up, and we're like this. I understand. Yes, yeah. Right, okay.
Well, I think the solution to that is these wonderful people there needs to be a movie of the musical. There is a movie already of And literally, this is how you take things out into the larger public. And hopefully, we will be seeing at some point a movie of the musical.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and the show is, for those of you who haven't seen it, it is in Jackson Hall, which seats about 2,500, and it is almost sold out. There are a few single tickets here and there, so please, if you haven't, make a visit to the box office today. But, and do we have any other questions? Maybe one more?
And it is for everyone. This is not, if it's anything, this is not a black play or white play. This is a Southern play, but it is an American musical.
Yeah.
It is a profound American musical. Any person, but any American will resonate to deeply.
And I think this will be our last question.
Thank you for coming today. So in closing, to piggyback on the lady's last question, this will be my third time seeing the play, but for people who've not seen it, in closing, would you tell the people who may want those few tickets, and there are just a few left, trust me, I know, because it was hard to get the ones that I have. Why would you say to come out and see this? I've seen it twice on Broadway, and this will be my first time seeing it in Nashville. And thank you for coming.
And I'm sure my sisters to my left may want to say something about this, but it's so uplifting. You will leave the theater jubilant. You will leave the theater on a high. Again, as the lady said, we are all going through something, but there's so much in this play that you can grab hold to. You'll hold it in your heart. You'll remember it in your head, and it will take you places. It will uplift you. Bring young people out. If there's a young girl in your family struggling with crises of any kind, I'm sure she'll be able to grab onto this. So if that's a commercial, nonetheless, it's a commercial. But I would say definitely it's for anyone who's struggling and who's alive.
And it will inspire you to find your own color purple.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank these lovely women. Thank you. Thank you.